back to Desertwood Days, and I am here with Mr. Anthony Tempesta. Welcome, Anthony.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kathy. I appreciate it.
Such a pleasure, such a pleasure. So, Anthony, you are an actor here in Arizona.
Correct.
So, when did you decide that you wanted to become an actor?
It kind of started when I was a kid. I was like 5 or 6 years old, and being originally born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania,
Okay.
growing up watching the Rocky movies, big Sylvester Stallone fan, and being an Italian born in South Philly, it kind of just had a love for movies and just acting, and it kind of that was one of the first things. Just watching some of those movies, being like, hey, Stallone's doing that kind of stuff. I'm from the same area. I'm Italian. I could do this, and I just was always a fan of watching movies and characters, and it kind of started with that. I remember I joke around with my family sometimes that my first real acting gig was in kindergarten. My teacher had us do a circus in class for all the parents,
Uh-huh.
and she had me as the strongest man. So I had to take these fake weights that are probably like, I don't know, Fisher Price or something, and pretend that I'm struggling to lift them, and
So
obviously
you're
they're.
putting on your performance.
Yeah, I'm putting on my performance back then. Had the strongman mustache that she drew on me, and I think it kind of started there. Where I was like, hey, you know what? Actually, I think that was my first real acting gig, because even though the parents know that those weights are fake, I'm still pretending that they're really heavy and whatever. But it kind of started there. But as far as professionally, my first gig was on a Hallmark movie, which was around, about 20 some years ago. I started in college. I just wanted to look into, I should really pursue this and check this out. And I kind of just found an avenue to get into acting. And then I just was lucky to be back around on a performance.
So was that when you were in Philadelphia?
No, actually, I grew up in Arizona. So I was
Oh,
born in
okay.
Philly, but my parents moved out here when I was really young. So most of my life has been out here.
Okay.
But yeah, I just kind of pursued it out here. One of those newspaper ads back in the day, and just kind of did the old buy some headshots, try to navigate and figure out how to get into the
So
industry.
how long have you been acting now?
I'd say about over 20 years now. This is, I think, my
So
21st year since the first background gig that I did on a
so what
professional set.
keeps you in the industry?
Through regular corporate jobs to college and everything else, it's something that I just never stopped having a love for. I can go from one thing to the next, but I always find my way back to it. I think the passion has just never left, and the excitement of collaborating with people and telling stories and playing characters. That it's just something I guess they say once the acting bug hits you, sometimes it doesn't go
Right.
away. And for me, it hasn't. I've seen a lot of people come and go, but I've just always loved it. And it's something that I think as long as I enjoy it, I'll always want to do it.
You mentioned Stallone was one of the actors that inspired you.
Sure.
Um, are there any other greats that may have
I
inspired
mean, there's
your
a ton.
role?
I mean, there's really too many to name. One of my favorite actors of all time is Al Pacino.
Mm.
From his preparation to putting the overall film itself as the most important thing, not just his performance as one
Mm.
person. Just the mentality he has always been huge for me. But I mean, anyone from like Meryl Streep to classical actors like Laurence Olivier. I was
Mm.
I'm a big horror movie fan too. So people
Who
from
is it around
yeah, people,
here?
it's real popular out here. Anyone from Robert Englund to old school black and white monster movies, guys like Boris Karloff
Sure.
and Christopher Lee, you know, Bela Lugosi, stuff like that. But I run the gamut with that. I just love acting and actors and
You
filmmaking.
love the industry
I
as
just
a
love it in
whole.
general. Yeah.
If there was a dream role for Anthony, what would that be?
Now, are we talking about something that could have already been made, or something in the future that hasn't been made, or it doesn't matter?
It doesn't matter.
That's really tough. I mean, there's so many things I love. It could be, you know, off the top of my head, I'd lean toward probably a couple different things. Either The Godfather 1 or 2, because of the cast that were in those movies, from De Niro to Brando to Pacino, you name it, James Caan. Star Wars is another thing dear to my heart. I mean, no matter what Star Wars movie you were in, if you're in one of those, like you're
Mhm.
part of that legacy that'll be around forever. I mean, so those things. I'm a huge James Bond fan, so I would love to be like a classical, like a one of those classic henchmen, like Oddjob or Jaws and those great movies, and Bond, maybe something cool like that. But yeah, I mean, just something memorable.
Do you think, as an actor, Do you see yourself? Do you put yourself in a box of? And when I say put yourself in a box, I mean you know which characters Anthony is fit to play.
Um, One of the things that they teach you with acting, especially managers and agents and others, is to know your type. They
Mm-hmm.
always talk about that all the time. And, there's certain things of myself that I know are my strong types. Certain dramatic roles I'm good at playing angry or, um, you know, the drama situations, but I also have a very, very silly side to myself. I'm a big John Candy fan. I grew up watching SCTV and Saturday Night Live, so people like Bill Murray and Dan
Mm-hmm.
Aykroyd, who I met, like people like that, like I always loved that side too. So I have, like I grew up with goofy stuff like Beavis and Butthead and South Park, a lot of that potty humor. So for me, I don't like to be pigeonholed to one thing. And, usually an actor, if they make it to the big time, there might be one thing that gets them there. But even a guy like Robert Englund, who played Freddy Krueger, I mean, he was playing smaller roles in so many different movies
Mm-hmm.
before he got, you know, pretty much typecasted as a actor in horror movies. I mean, he was in a James Bond movie, I remember. So I think it's important for an actor not to know their type, but to
Uh-huh.
also try different things because you never know. You might be good at something that you might not even realize. You might be just a comedic actor and done only Shakespeare theater.
Do you think we do that because it's just our comfort level? If I'm funny, so I tend to just gravitate to comedy.
There is a comfort level, I believe, to acting, but I think at the same time, it's the unknown that sometimes can be really exciting. Like starting off, I did mostly uh, just good guy roles and things like that. And then once I played
Sometimes
my
you want to
first bad
be.
guy role, I'm just
Sometimes
like,
you want to be the bad
wow, this is
guy,
actually
huh?
pretty fun. Yeah, yeah. And so the bad guy roles are like a lot of people say, like, I like playing the bad guy because it's a lot more fun, and it
Right.
can be. So I think try things, and go out of your comfort zone because you never know. You might be great at something, and if you didn't give it a chance, you would never know.
True. That's true. So, tell us about one of your most memorable roles.
Okay. I would say one of my most memorable roles was actually playing a bad guy. It was in a webisode series that turned into a feature length called Western X that we did, shot locally here. It's a post apocalyptic Western that was done kind of in the same vein of maybe like Mad Max meets the Old West, I guess you can
Mm-hmm.
say. And the director, Mike Flores, on that project actually cast Vernon Wells to play one of the head commanders in it. And for those that know Vernon, I was actually a big fan of his work. He played with Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando as the main bad guy, Bennett. And he was also the character of Wes in the second Mad Max movie, The Road Warrior. He's the dude with the red mohawk that's so popular in pop culture and was also reprised that role in Weird Science briefly. And so I got to actually meet him. Didn't work with him on set, but we were part of the same bad guy clan. So that was really cool for me to meet someone that I grew up watching his
Right.
movies and admiring, a great Australian actor. But at the same time, I got to play a bad guy and wear these old school, black attire. We were called the Black Coats, and that was Private Reese, this bad guy that walks around and even grabs a girl's doll and throws it on the ground. It just has contempt for the world, and so it was kind of exciting to be shooting, in Arizona in the Old West type of setting, but being post-apocalyptic, and it was a lot of fun.
Where were you guys shooting?
We shot all over. We shot in different Western towns. Rawhide and Chandler was one of them,
Oh.
and we shot in a couple different locations that were outside of
Hmm.
the Western town and a few
Okay.
other locations. And some things were done with uh, scale modeling of different sizes and things in post production that are beyond my realm of expertise. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was cool.
So earlier you had mentioned about your, I believe you said your coach or your acting coach, I believe. Do you recommend that actors should get training?
Yes, I think like any you don't become a brain surgeon and just go to a couple classes and then just do it. Even with acting, you have to learn your craft. I think it's important to educate yourself in anything you do that's worth pursuing.
Hmm.
I think you're only going to get better with knowledge, and you don't have to take all the knowledge you learn or use every style of acting you learn in different classes, whether it's Meisner or method acting technique or even just learning for, just commercial acting versus film acting or theater acting or whatever. But I think the more, I think of it almost like a toolkit. Just like a plumber has his tools or mechanic, an actor's got his tool belt. And there's times where I'm like, okay, you know what? This technique that I learned would work really good in this character. And some of the things I learned from this other teacher works really well for this.
Sure.
And you don't actually necessarily need everything for everything you do for every role.
Do you have a technique that you gravitate to?
I tend to be a big fan of the method acting. I think because some of my favorite actors are method actors.
Okay.
I think a lot of people tend to think of method acting as necessarily the extreme side of it. If I'm going to play a vampire like in Nosferatu, someone saying, hey, I'm not going to be seen until the day of when I'm in makeup. I'm going to sleep in a coffin. But you don't necessarily have to go that far. There's little things like the breathing techniques to be relaxed on set could be used in all walks of life. Talking about, learning about diaphragmatic breathing.
Sure.
But I tend to gravitate toward that. But I may not use everything about that just for a role, but it could be little things like my use of color or sense of smell. It's one of those things where, I like to prepare for a role. I like to create a backstory. I'm a big believer in, before you go on set for your scenes, to think about where was your character at? What are they thinking prior to that? One of my favorite actors I talked about earlier, Al Pacino, he's very big on thinking about where was his character right before the scene he's about to shoot. What was he thinking? What was he doing? So little things like that I try to keep in mind. But, every part, every role could be different. Some of it, I like to bring a little bit of myself in every part that I play. But at the same time, you have to think about that character. And if it is somebody you would never be in real life, like how can you relate to that? And you have to believe in that character. Even when you're playing a bad guy, you kind of have to know, like, okay, I would never do that in real life, but I have to have that mentality that he's right, because otherwise it won't come across as believable.
So you brought a trailer or a sizzle reel for us to see today?
Yeah, a reel with just some different characters I've played and just to show a little diversity of things I've done and just something fun.
Okay, well, we're going to take a look at that.
All right, sounds good.
I'm still mad about tomorrow.
RJ, I'll sit with you tomorrow.
Oh, yeah? I can't. I have a graduation to go to tomorrow.
What?
Take up my taco!
Why are you mad at me about not being able to go with you tomorrow if you can't even go yourself?
No, I'm mad because you went and saw it with someone else before me, even though we already had plans.
But you couldn't have gone to it anyway.
That doesn't matter! We both didn't know that at the time!
Just keep moving.
What if she's still alive?
Babe, she's throwing up like dinner and covered in blood. It doesn't look good. Oh, an expressionless like a doll.
I don't want to die here. I don't want to die here.
Oh my goodness. I'm not laughing at the end, but okay, tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so the first film, first little scene you saw was from a film based on a true story. So this director who played one of the characters in the film that's just has a little quick part pouring some coffee for us as we're having an argument. He had this idea based on an argument his two friends have, and these friends of his were arguing over seeing a movie where one of them saw it without the other one, and they were supposed to go together. And so he wanted to reenact this, so he had me acting like his friend in real life, where you don't see the whole thing, but later on, I'm like hyperventilating and breathing heavy because that's what his friend does when he gets all upset, and he talks real fast, and and so he shot this, and then he showed his friends afterwards, and they were just like laughing, like, "You're not going to show this to anybody, are you?" So it's based on a true story with an argument with some friends, and the other film was a horror movie that we shot in a dilapidated house on Fourth Avenue in downtown Phoenix. That house really didn't need a whole lot of staging because it was already in pretty rough shape. But a lot of the great stuff that the director Candy did for it, they made it look like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of house, and it was a horror film based on, trying to escape and not knowing where exactly you're at, how you got there, and so it shows how scary things can be sometimes.
Right. Being a method actor, so playing in a horror flick, do you find yourself actually getting scared?
I think you have to put your mind in that realm, definitely. The thing that's interesting about acting that people that don't act may not realize is whether mentally or you're there or not, your body doesn't know the difference. When you are crying or upset, your body reacts the same way that it does whether you're acting or not. So it's very interesting that you need to come down afterwards, just like you would crying from an argument or getting red in the face from being angry. So I always found that interesting with acting, was like, if I'm acting upset, my body's behaving the same way physiologically as it was if I'm doing it for real. So yeah, you have that that level of trueness that happens where you kind of, the more real that it is and the more scared you really are, the more it comes across. So I think there definitely is something to that for it to work right.
What do you have any new projects coming up?
Yeah, there's some that for disclosure reasons I can't discuss, but I did some work on a couple television shows. One of them's doing some background for a major TV network. Another one will be aired probably in spring. But I've got a feature-length film that has been in editing for over a year now, that the director did. That's kind of a ghost campfire story kind of film with little vignettes of different ghost stories that these guys are doing for like a comedy horror. So hopefully within the next year or less that'll come out, and a couple projects along the way, and a short film that'll be really good that I worked with Ted Tanaka and some other great talent that has done really well with the screenplay with different festivals, called Her Monster, that we're really excited about. That's been making some headway. So hopefully that'll come out sooner than later as well.
Sure. As an actor, you mentioned you had some new films that you worked with that you can speak of. When you work, I want to say let's say a local indie film versus say you get a part in a HBO show or something.
Sure.
Do you find that you work just as hard as preparing for that indie film as you would that HBO show?
I think it depends, because it depends on the role you have. When I'm doing, even all the years I've been doing what I do, I still work as background on things. And I treat everything as important. So for me, your preparation for background may only be just figuring out wardrobe or them figuring out wardrobe for you. But I still try to get in the same mentality, even if I'm an extra on something like walking from point A to point B. What is my motivation? I still want to come across as real as possible. So I guess it depends on the role. I mean, if you have a bigger part, then obviously you're going to put more time into it. But I think whether it's I
guess what I meant was, do you treat it with the same urgency, the same importance, each of them?
Definitely, because I've worked with people doing their college thesis films, and you never know who's going to be the next Steven Spielberg that's working on those films. I work with some great people that are out doing great things in LA now, and every film is important to me.
Sure.
And I think that you never know what's going to become the next great thing, or that project leads to more things from that director. And before you know it, people are coming back looking at their old stuff. So I think it's always important to do your best work, no matter, because even when people aren't watching or it's not going to be out on the big screen, you're going to get better the more you work at it.
And you know what? You'll hear people say this all the time. I mean, they may have been a background extra or a feature, but that might be the one face that you see the most of
Sure.
on
Absolutely.
the camera.
Yeah,
But if you were there and you didn't treat it with that same urgency or importance, I mean, what was that face going to look like on camera?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you know what? I ask these questions because I feel like even though we're an entertainment show, but we're also teaching. We're entertainers, and there's other entertainers out here listening to what Anthony's saying,
Absolutely.
and will pick up some tools to put in their belt
Yeah.
from
No.
what you're saying.
Yeah. I think film is. I treat filmmaking like building a car. You got to have the radio. You got to have the engine. The tires got to be working, and everybody's important, from the extra to the sound and lighting
Of
guy to the
course.
makeup artist. And I treat everybody, the way I want to be treated. And I
Sure.
realize that, it's not going to get done properly without everybody doing their best work.
That
And so I
is so
respect it
true.
all.
That's the attitude we should all have. Where can our audience find you?
You can find me at Linktree /Anthony Tempesta, or my IMDb, which is imdb.me/Anthony Tempesta.
Wonderful, because Kathy loves Linktree.
All right, that's great. I've just recently got into it myself, and I think it's
Yes.
fantastic.
It is. Well, thank you for joining us
Thank
today.
you for having
It was
me. I
such
really
a
appreciate it.
pleasure.
Likewise, thank you.
And thank you for joining us today here at Desertwood Days, and we'll catch you next time.